Oh, I so can explain trance talk. All right. So trance talk was one of the points on my 20-point guru gotcha checklist, right? For looking out for toxic leaders. And this is about trance talk from my next book, which I just finished this week. Oh, I still can't believe it. 2.5 years. Okay. Trance talk, hypnotic speech and emotional control. Cult leaders don't just speak, they perform. This is what Knitting Cult Lady is doing as a psyop on you. She's performing. Performing doesn't make you a cult leader. Cult leaders just know how to do it. Trance talk is a hypnotic, rhythmic style of speech that lulls listeners into an emotionally heightened state, making them more open to suggestion. Jim Jones, like so many evangelical and Pentecostal preachers today, mastered this techniques, starting his sermons slow, his voice calm and repetitive, then building to a fever pitch, whipping his congregation into an emotional frenzy. It wasn't just what he said, but how he said it. The pacing, volume shifts, and intensity. By the time he was shouting, his followers weren't just listening, they were feeling. On the infamous death tape, the recording of the speech in Jonestown, where he convinced hundreds to commit mass unalivings, his grip was absolute. A rhetorical analysis of that final speech shows how calculated his manipulation was. He leaned hard on emotion, pathos, painting a world full of enemies and dangers. He used ethos, his supposed authority, to position himself as their only protector. And while he occasionally threw in bits of logos, logic wasn't the goal. Jones knew that if he could get his followers to feel what he was saying, they wouldn't stop to analyze whether it made sense. And in the end, most of them didn't. L. Ron Hubbard took a different approach, crafting a hypnotic language of jargon, engram, auditing, suppressive person, that made Scientology feel exclusive. The more complicated it sounded, the more special it felt. If you didn't quite understand, that just meant you had more to learn, like you were working toward unlocking some ultimate hidden truth. Mystery was the hook, because once you buy into the language, you're already halfway to buying into the belief system. Keith Raniere of Nexium perfected the rambling philosopher act with lectures that were long-winded, circular, and vague, yet followers believed they contained profound truths. When they didn't understand, they assumed it was their failure, not his. This word salad is a common control tactic, keeping followers doubting themselves instead of the leader. Whenever people say to me, oh, so trance talk's like word salad? I'm like, yes, but with a salad dressing of coercive control. Donald Trump uses a similar playbook with repetitive, emotionally charged slogans like fake news, witch hunt, lock her up. These aren't just catchphrases, they're chants, mental shortcuts that simplify complex ideas, bypassing critical thinking, and reinforce his vision of reality. Like Raniere, his zigzagging speeches rely more on emotional resonance than coherence. You may not be able to explain what Raniere or Trump just said, but you sure know how it made you feel. I used to send people to watch The Vow about Raniere and Nexium to better understand trance talk. Now I recommend the 2024 Trump-Harris presidential debate. Why does trance talk work? It bypasses logic, taps straight into emotion, and makes followers feel like they're part of something special, something only they truly understand. Whether it's Jones, Hubbard, Raniere, or Trump, the result is the same: unquestioning belief and unwavering loyalty. And this, by the way, is like the common thread of cults, is they make you feel special. And I think this is why we sometimes go cult hopping after our initial cult experience, right? The initial cult experience isn't usually like your choice. Like you were either born into it or you were like deceptively manipulated and recruited, because that's what cults do. But then we go on these like quests afterwards sometimes. And I think it's like, we really are trying to find that feeling that made us feel special. And as I like to say, or as someone told me in my book, you're not as different as you think you are. Like you're unique and individual, but you're not special. I'm Danielle, a scholar of cults, extreme groups, and extremely bad leadership, and I wrote this book, Uncultured, about growing up in the Children of God religious cult before going into the cult of the U.S. Army. You can get signed copies attached here. This other book that I'm reading to you from, it's called The Culting of America, and it's almost done.